What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the channel. Today we are talking about a pretty simple and short topic, but something that gets overlooked a lot by a lot of people, and that is coaching XP and the benefits that it gives you when you accumulate a lot of coaching XP. Now, this kind of builds off the last video that I had, which was winning versus tanking, and this is another added benefit to winning games as opposed to tanking, is that when you win games, you get a lot more XP for your coach, and then it gives you a bunch of sub-benefits to that. And so I highly recommend that you try and win a lot of games. Even if you're a bad team that needs to rebuild, I recommend you winning because you get the added benefit of getting XP for your coach. Well, why does that matter? And what are some other ways that you can get XP for your coach? The reason that the coaching XP matters is that you can get a ton of really useful benefits. So if you go to the My Coach tab under the Team tab here in your franchise mode, and you go to My Coach, now this is for coaching mode. If you're in the owner mode, there's another way that you need to get to it and find it, but you can still get to the My Coach tab and you can spend Coach XP. And it gives you a lot of different options for bonuses here. You have three categories. You have player acquisition, player retention, and player progression. And these all matter for various different ways. I've covered these in other videos, but I'm going to give you a breakdown of why all of these are really helpful for you in this video here today. First and foremost is the expert scouting package. Now that is going to increase your scouting points from 150 per week to 200 per week, which is going to allow you to scout a lot more players and give you a lot more coverage when it hits draft time. And if this is really important for when you're trying to rebuild a team, because if you can acquire this trait early in the season, you're going to give yourself a lot more prospect coverage. You're going to be able to be more successful in the draft because you know who's good and who's not. And so you'll be able to see a lot of scouting like me, where I have 1 week worth of scouting in, and I was able to scout almost half of an entire position. I was able to scout pretty much half of the cornerbacks. Now, I can make a separate video on how I scout and how you guys should scout here in Madden 20. If that's something you guys want to see, let me know down in the comment section or leave a like on this video. But I scout a lot differently than some people in Madden. I don't scout the entire player. I scout based off of their first trait, and I now have coverage of basically half of all of the cornerbacks here in the draft, just because I have that extra 50 or so points. You know, if you were just using the basic scouting and you didn't have that coach scout trait available, you might only be able to get like the first and second round players scouted or something like that. And so I have a whole bunch extra scouted, and I'll be able to get more than I need in terms of players scouted for me to have a successful draft rounds 1 through 7 and pick up a lot of great picks. So that's the first benefit to your coach XP, and that's one of the ones that I recommend you get first, especially if you're in a league where you don't know who's good or not. Maybe you're doing random draft classes and not downloaded draft classes. This will help you out quite a bit. Next is the Master Trade Negotiator. Now, this one matters for leagues where you guys are allowed to trade a lot. You are trading a lot, and there isn't a whole lot of opposition in the way of you trading. You don't need a lot of approval. If you're trying to go out and make trades, this is going to make your trades more successful. Say you're trading for a specific player, and normally it would require a first-round pick to get them. Well, maybe it requires a second-round pick based off the Master Trade Negotiator ability. Now, that's a huge difference there. I don't think it's quite that impactful, but it will help you significantly in the trading game. If you're a person that likes to trade a lot, this trade that only costs 1800 XP will allow you the ability to make your trades a lot easier, and you don't have to give up as much in return to get specific players or picks. Then we're going to go down to all of these free agency influence traits. I recommend saving your training towards the end of the season to save it for free agency. Once you determine who you're going to be bidding on in free agency, then buy that free agency influence trait. So say I see a running back that I really want there out free agency, and I'm competing with other people for them. If I activate the running back free agency influence trait, I'm going to get more points towards that player by bidding the same amount of money as somebody else. So say I offer them $10 million, my offer might be a 105-point offer, but somebody that normally doesn't have this trait offers them $10 million, their offer might be a 100-point offer. So this gives you additional points towards your free agents and being able to sign them. These traits are really useful. I recommend you save up like 4,000 or so XP towards the end of the season so you can at least buy one of these for a position that you desperately need. Some of them are even cheaper, like D-line, linebacker, and stuff like that. Those are cheaper. Some of the offensive ones are more expensive, like quarterbacks and running backs. I recommend getting as many of these as you can, especially if you're a big player in off-season, you have a lot of cap space, and you're negotiating with a lot of other users. That will help you quite a bit. One of the best ones this year for me is offensive line, because there are so few offensive line. They're so few and far between to get good offensive linemen. So to be able to sign those players for, a reasonable price is really going to help you guys out. Next, we're going to move on to the player retention screen. Now, these ones aren't quite as important, and by that I mean like the retirement influences. Generally speaking, once a player gets to a point that they're going to retire, you don't really want them around anyway. The only players that this is really going to help you with is maybe your quarterback. You don't want your Tom Brady or your Ben Roethlisberger or whoever it might be to retire in your franchise, so you buy the quarterback retirement influence or something like that. For the most part, these retirement influences aren't going to help you out too much, but if you do have a player that you really don't want to retire, if you purchase this before the end of the season, they're much less likely to actually retire on you, and they'll be able to stick around for another season, which is really nice. The next important thing here are all of these re-sign influence traits, and these can be really helpful for you. If you have somebody that's really stubborn throughout the season and you can't get them to re-sign, once you purchase this trait, it's going to allow them to re-sign much easier. It's going to take away a lot of that negotiation and all those issues that you're having. Right now, for example, in my franchise, I had, let me show you guys, I was re-signing somebody and they rejected my signing. So if we go to Resign Players, I was able to negotiate with one player, but then Keenan Allen rejected a higher offer than what his fair offer says it is. And so if I want to be able to get him back easier without really overpaying for him, what I can do is I can go into the My Coach and spend My Coach XP, and I can purchase the wide receiver re-sign influence trait, and that's going to allow me to sign him without having to bid up too much more than what I think he's really worth or what the fair offer says he's worth. Can be really, really useful for those high overall players, and when you're in a year like I am, where you have a lot of high overall players that you have to re-sign. So if I go to my Resign Players influence here, or Resign Players, I have a lot of really good players here. I have a 94, a 90, my 88 quarterback, an 87 defensive end, offensive linemen. I have a lot of good players that I have to re-sign this year, and if I don't get some of those re-sign influences, I might not be able to retain all of these players. If you do get the re-sign influences, you should be able to sign these players easier, and that's really nice. I recommend that if there's like a couple players at a specific position that you need to re-sign, like let's say you have 3 receivers that you need to re-sign or 3 corners, buy that re-sign influence trait, because it'll be able to hit the most targets and save you the most money across the board. So that's really helpful. And that's pretty much all there is to the player retention screen. The only ones that you really need to worry about are the re-sign influences. Those ones can be extremely helpful for you. And in very rare cases, the retirement influence can be helpful for you as well. Now, the player progression tab is probably the most important tab for me. The one trait that you're going to want to buy before anything else is the increased player weekly goal XP, and this is going to give you bonus XP every single week, every time your player earn a weekly goal, and that happens quite a bit. It happens without you even really paying attention to it. It just happens because you're playing the game and you get your guys good stats. Very helpful. Now, if you want to get your players' overalls up, I really recommend you buying all these training boosts. As you can see, I have a lot of the training boosts purchased on this tab, and I'm working towards buying like the quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and running back training boosts. Those ones are more expensive. I recommend buying the O-line, the D-line, the linebackers, and the DBs because they are a little bit cheaper, and they get you a ton of bonus XP when you actually do your training week to week. And this is going to help you out in the long run build your team, because you don't have to necessarily get everybody from the outside. You can build players up from the inside and increase their overall significantly. As you guys can see, I'm the Chargers. We didn't start out with the greatest team, but we have a lot of players powered up pretty highly here. Offensive line up into the 80s that started out as mid-70s, Hunter Henry up to a 90 overall, stuff like that. A couple wide receivers that have been upgraded in terms of their overall. And then defensively speaking, I have a lot of higher overall players that we've gotten up from really low overalls that are playing really well for us. And so that's a benefit of having that bonus XP. It's really going to increase your ability to develop your team as you go on. And so that's kind of the importance of all of these Coach XP traits, and why Coaching XP matters, is that you can really help build your team in multiple different ways by gaining these Coach XP traits. And so now we have to talk about, well, how do you get more XP? First and foremost, winning. Every time you win a game, you get a ton of Coaching XP. Every time you win a playoff game or win a Super Bowl, you get a ton of bonus XP. And as you guys can see, I have a shit ton of XP here. If I go to my stats, I believe it is, and we look at the legacy leaderboard, I'm already up to number 7 on the legacy leaderboard. Every time you move up this legacy leaderboard, that means that you're getting a ton of XP. You know, I am basically at a point where I should have as many traits as a guy like Ron Rivera, because I'm moving up that player legacy leaderboard. And so this is a good tab to see what really counts for your coaches and what's going to give you additional legacy and what's going to give you additional XP. Every time you get a yearly award, every time you win an AFC or NFC championship game, every time you win a Super Bowl, and every time you win a game, that's going to give you bonus XP for your coach. And so as you guys can see down there at the bottom, I have won the Coach of the Year award. I've won an AFC championship game. I've won a Super Bowl. And all of that stuff is contributing to me getting bonus XP. And every time you win games, you're going to get bonus XP. If you finish the season undefeated, you're going to get a ton of bonus XP for your coach. But the primary factor in getting extra XP for your coach is doing well week to week and winning your games. And if you continue to do well week to week and win your games, you're going to get extra XP. And it basically snowballs, is what I want to tell you guys. You get XP, you win games, you get XP for your players, you get XP for your coaches, and everything builds from there. So that's why the coaching XP really matters, because it can help you build your team, help you draft better players, and in turn, his coaching XP upgrades will allow them to develop faster and get higher overalls, and that allows you to win more games and make it into the playoffs and win more games, and that gives you more XP for your coach, which then gives you more XP for your players. And it's this cycle that really helps your team build, and it's kind of the best way to rebuild your team. If you're not winning games, then you're losing out on that coach XP, you're losing out on player XP and everything like that. And so that's why this video is being made, is because this is really helpful for you guys, and I don't think people really take into account how much those coach traits can really affect your team. And even if you're starting off, you know, I'll go over to my other franchise. If you're starting off with a team that has a low overall coach, don't bother signing another coach or something like that. Don't fire your coach. It just doesn't really have any effect, except for you lose out on the traits that they have. Anytime that you sign one of those coaches off of the free agency field, basically, of coaches, you're not going to be able to do much with them because they don't have the coaching traits. But if I go to my coach here, if I go to my staff and go to my coach, you'll be able to see that he's only a level 5, but he already has a whole bunch of upgrade packages. So, and I actually forgot to buy the increased weekly player XP goal, but he has the O-line, D-line, linebacker, and DB traits already on him. I'm not going to get that out of a free agent coach. You know what I mean? He's only a level 5, and he already has a ton of the traits that I want him to have. So just stick with whatever coach you have, or when you immediately start the league, make sure that you get a coach that you want to have if you're playing as an owner, and just roll with them and keep building their traits up. Their level really doesn't impact anything. It just impacts slightly the fan happiness, and they'll get over that because the guy will level up eventually over time. So definitely roll with one guy, build him up as high as you can in terms of how many traits you can get him, and then you're going to be able to build your team a lot more easily. And as you guys can see, I have the Giants team up to a really nice overall after not even adding anybody to the team, just playing base with the roster from week 8 or 9. I just won a bunch of games, got a bunch of XP, and so on. And so I have a lot of good players that have developed pretty nicely for me, you know, guys like Lorenzo Carter, Jabril Peppers, Dexter Lawrence, and whatnot. So that's why you want to focus on Coach XP and win as many games as possible. Hopefully this information helps you guys out in some way with your franchises. Like I said, if it does, leave a like on the video, comment down below. If you guys want to see that video I mentioned about how I scout players, definitely leave a comment down below. Let me know that you want to see that, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a great day.